On February 26th of 2012, 17-year-old African-American boy had gone into a convenience store and was walking along the street minding his own business. He was approached by this neighborhood watch person, and an altercation broke out. And of course, in the altercation, the young boy was shot and killed. And the person who shot him was acquitted of that crime, and because of that gross miscarriage of justice in the minds of many people, a movement erupted and social media kind of exploded with a hashtag. Some of you might remember this. And the hashtag was Black Lives Matter. Now, Trayvon Martin, he was, I guess, the spark, if you will, that ignited the roaring flame that we know today as Black Lives Matter. But the effort expanded kind of exponentially in the wake of so many other police-related killings, unjustified killings of unarmed black men. Okay? You might remember people like Freddie Gray in Baltimore, who had a spinal cord injury inflicted upon him, and he later died as a result of his handling by police officers. Walter Scott in North Charleston, South Carolina, who was running away from the police and got shot in the back. I mean, the whole time he's running and pap, 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 and of course, Walter Scott dies. Eric Harris in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Officer claimed that he thought he was going for his taser gun when he shot Eric. Now, and I don't know about you, but I'm an old farm boy, and I know the difference between a .357 Magnum and a .38. I don't care if it's dark, I don't care if I'm half out of my mind, because of just the weight of the weapon, I know the difference. Again, not putting anything in the officer's mind, but I know the difference between one weapon and another just by virtue of use. You got 19-year-old Tony Robinson in Madison, Wisconsin. Traffic disturbance, he was shot dead by police officers, and of course he had no weapon. Jeremy Reed in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Same thing, traffic stop, shot dead. Romaine Brisbane in Phoenix. The officer thought that he had a gun, that Romaine had a gun. What Romaine had was a pill bottle. Now you just imagine, you got Tylenol in your hand, and somebody says that it's a gun, and the next thing you know, you're dead. But that's what happened to Romaine. And again, it happened to several other people as well. So as we look at all of this, we consider 12-year-old Tamir Rice. We know the story. He is, of course, a little boy out there, at the park, got a little toy in his hand. The persons who called in the call said, well, it looks like a toy in his hand. It doesn't look like a real gun, but when the police roll up, they don't ask him 2 words, they just shoot him down. And again, I want you to kind of internalize this and think about your own 12-year-old child or your 12-year-old nephew or your 12-year-old neighbor, or because this isn't just the news that happens to other people. You see, this is the stuff that happens to us. And again, we consider that as we wrap our minds around all of this. Akai Gurley in Brooklyn, shot and killed while walking with his girlfriend in a stairwell of a public housing complex. No weapon, no nothing, just walking with his girlfriend. Cop comes up, gets excited, and shoots him dead. Tanisha Anderson of Cleveland, she died because the police slammed her head into the pavement as they were arresting her, and of course the internal injuries caused her to die. And we're not just talking about black males, we're also, of course, talking about black women. Dante Parker in Victorville, California, he was tased repeatedly in police custody, and he died as a result of that tasing. Ezell Ford in Florence, California, shot 3 times, once in the back. Now, I'm still trying to figure out how he could be a threat if he got shot in the back, but again, that's what happened, and that's what people are, of course, dealing with. 18-year-old Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that we all know so much about. John Crawford in Walmart with a BB gun, playing around. There was not even any confrontation with the police officers. They just saw a black man with a BB gun, and they laid him out. And that was the end of him. So we consider all of this, and we think about Eric Garner. 2 years ago today, July 17th of 2014, Eric Garner was put in that illegal chokehold, and of course, he died. Dontre Hamilton in Wisconsin, shot 14 times Not once, not twice, not 10, not 6, 14 times in the park. And of course, he was unarmed, and that's the end of him. Well, the list is extensive, and I don't have time, of course, to enumerate them all. There's no time for all of those names, but you can tack on 2 of the most recent additions. That, of course, would be Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. Now, you hear all of that, and let me pause for a second. What do you think when you hear what I just said? Anybody? Okay? Nothing new. Explain. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to keep that in the back of our minds. Thank you, Juanita. That's going to serve us a little bit later on. Okay? Because we hear all of this and we, see the pain, the anger, the disappointment, the mistrust. In the face of all of that anger and pain and disappointment and mistrust, 3 women stood up and they decided that they would do something about it. Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors. They are the ones who created the movement called Black Lives Matter. And as I look at what they did, they basically took it from the keyboard into the streets. Remember, after Trayvon Martin was killed, it was all over social media, Twitter, and all that sort of thing. Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. But people were just basically typing about it. And what these 3 women did, they said, let's take it from the typewriter and put it, of course, on the pavement. And as I was looking at them and learning a little bit more about them, I went to their website. And if you've not done this before, I encourage you to do so. Now, you'll disagree, of course, with a lot of what they share and what they present, but you'll agree with a lot of what they share and what they present. And according to them, Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention in a world where black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. It is an affirmation of black folks' contributions to this society. It is an affirmation of our humanity and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression. Black Lives Matter is a chapter-based national organization working for the validity of black life. The validity of black life. I like that. Now, when you talk about the validity of black life, I want you to expand your thinking. Because last year, 102 black people were killed by police. That works out to 2 black folk per week, 5 times greater than the number of white folks who are killed by police officers, but those are the statistics. But I want you to slow your roll, because it's not just police officers killing black people. Because when we look at the numbers, we see in Chicago alone, there have been 2,172 shootings this year. Now, this is only mid-July. We got the rest of the year to go. And they've already had almost 2,200 shootings in Chicago. They've had 350 homicides in Chicago. The murder rate is up 72%. This year alone in Chicago, shootings are up 88%. This year alone in Chicago. And it's not the police doing all of this shooting. For the most part, it's black people shooting other black people in Chicago. We look at the math, and what we have is every 2 minutes in Chicago, somebody is shot. Every 13 minutes in Chicago, somebody dies as a result of being shot. So you just think about a 1-hour worship service. By the time we finish up here, there will be 4 dead people, 4 dead black males in Chicago. Now, again, the police aren't pulling all those triggers. So we understand that, but we look at the facts. Those are the facts. But the question that I ask is, where are the faithful? We hear the facts, but where are the faithful? Where is our voice? We hear from Alicia, we hear from Opal, we hear from Patrice. We see them taking a stand. We know that they are creating a national movement, but what about the movement of Jesus? What about that movement? What is our role? And more directly, what is your role? As you sit there in that chair and listen to me on today, what is it that you are going to do? Where is your voice? Well, again, we'll answer all of those questions as we think about this idea that, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And with God's help, we'll see that a little bit more on today. Despite all of the information that I just gave you, all of the stats, what Juanita said a moment ago about the systemic treatment and thinking to and about black people in this country that have led us to this point of, if you can't trust authority, then who can you trust? Well, wait a minute, we never could trust authority because authority had us as slaves, authorities had us in Jim Crow, authority had us segregated, authority had us relegated. So when you got cops shooting black folk, it's just a reminder of all of that, and it explodes even more. So when we consider all of that, that's the fact. That's the evidence. These are the realities, but you still have folk bumping their guns. As Obama would say, popping off about stuff they really don't know anything about. You got Bill O'Reilly, who says that Black Lives Matter, it's a hate group that wants police officers dead. When the shooter, Micah Johnson, was acting a fool in Dallas a few weeks ago, I was kind of trying to keep up with it, and I'm reading the feeds and everything, and folk are talking about the fact that he is associated with Black Lives Matter. Now, that's before they identified the shooter. That's before anything. But it was just assumed that Michael Johnson was a part of Black Lives Matter. Of course, nothing could be farther from the truth. Out of his own mouth, he said he had nothing to do with the organization. But that, again, is where the thinking went. So it doesn't matter about the facts. Folks are going to bump their guns. Like Bill O'Reilly, as I just told you. You got this guy named Chuck Crismier. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to him before. But I was listening to him a few days ago. And Chuck Crismier was saying, Black Lives Matter, they're talking about all of this, but the problem is within black people themselves. And he talked about the fact that you black men, you're not in the home. You're not raising. Now, he's a black preacher with a national radio show. And he's saying basically that you all are a bunch of just irresponsible jokers who don't take care of your families, that sexual promiscuity in the black community is a badge of honor, and because you have no self-control and you have no rearing of your children in your home, all of that spills out and explodes into the recklessness of black people today. So basically, because y'all are a bunch of whores and sluts who are irresponsible, that's why you're getting killed the way you are. Now, that's what he says. And again, lack of information doesn't stop his communication because he still talks and talks and talks some more. Rush Limbaugh, and not just him, but dozens of people on talk radio, these are the sentiments that they express, these are the positions that they hold. Black Lives Matter, it's a terrorist group, and what they do is they commit hate crimes. Now that's what Rush Limbaugh says. And you've got many more, as I just said, who are saying the same thing. So we hear the voice of the uninformed. We hear the voice of the racist. We hear the voice of the ignorant. And you sitting in that chair, Juanita sitting over in that corner, knowing the history of black people in America, you might say, well, how can they say that? How can they reach those conclusions? We need to understand that it's hard to empathize with folk when you have no frame of reference with those folk. Well, what are you talking about, Nesmith? Well, what if I told you this? Guys, you have got to understand what it's like to live on Jupiter. On the planet Jupiter, let me tell you what we do on Sunday morning. And then on the planet Jupiter, in August, this is what we do. And then as we live our lives on the planet Jupiter, what we like to do on Sunday afternoon is I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk if I were from the planet Jupiter. And I'm trying to get y'all to understand what life is like on the planet Jupiter. I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And you might hear my words, but you won't understand what I'm saying because you have absolutely no frame of reference for living on Jupiter. That doesn't mean anything to you. You don't even have a point of connection that you can use to try to understand what I'm saying. All you hear is a bunch of words. And it's the same way when we think about people today, some white people today. They don't have that frame of reference. So when you talk about Black Lives Matters, they don't get what Juanita just said. They don't get the frustration and the tension that exists within the country, that exists within us as people. You see, they don't have relatives in their family, as I have in mine, who can tell you about the sharecropper, the guy who owned the farm, beating a grown man with a belt because he didn't do what he told him to do. Now, I'm not talking about 1865. I'm talking about 1930s, okay? this white man beaten with a belt a grown behind black man on the sharecropping farm because he didn't, see, I got relatives in my family, I don't know about y'all, but I got relatives in my family who can tell me what life was like 2 or 3 generations ago in the South. And again, if you're not a part of that, you can't understand that. You can't understand what it's like to walk into an elevator and have a white woman almost try to become a part of the corner of the elevator and wish that she can kind of melt into it. You get on the elevator, she backs up and holds onto her purse like she's holding on to dear life. And if she could actually get out of the elevator through the back corner, that's exactly what she would do. That has happened to me so many times. And you know the only thing that changes it? I greet the person and begin a conversation. And when I do that, instantly the whole dynamic in that elevator changes. Because I go from a stereotype to a person. No, I go from a stereotype to a person. Let me leave it there, okay? And that, again, is what happens. But if I hadn't made that contact, then she would have, again, left the elevator with her same thoughts. They don't know what it's like to walk down the street and then somebody else crosses the street when they see you coming. They don't know that. I can go on and on, but y'all get the point, okay? This, again, is what we're dealing with. This is what we understand. And don't think that you can escape it by becoming an educated person and doing well for yourself and moving out into the right neighborhood and all that sort of thing. Y'all remember several years ago when an old fellow up in Cambridge got locked out of his own house and he was trying to get into his house, and Dr. Henry Louis Gates, one of the most well-known African-American scholars on the planet, has done PBS broadcasts, PBS series, taught at Harvard for years, not years, but years. But he's a black man in Cambridge trying to get into his own house. And the police came by and said, whatever that word is that they use sometimes. Of course, they didn't say the word out loud, but they had an attitude. Because I guarantee you, if Biff was trying to get into his house, he wouldn't have had that situation. But Henry Louis Gates might be a well-known scholar, might be a prolific presenter, but his name ain't Biff. He was a black man looking like he was breaking into a house, and they arrested him. So don't think that my education and my location changes my situation. Because, my friends, it does not. Only something else could aid in that transformation, and we'll get to that in just a second. So when we think about all of this and just, let it kind of get down into our soul and spirit, we begin to realize some things. All of this, my friends, is what we hear when we listen to the voice of the world. But again, I ask, where is the voice of the church? Where is your voice? Where is mine? As we think about a response to that, I want you to consider the condition again of our culture. God bless America. America is a Christian nation. What we got to do is we got to get back to our what? Christian values. How many times have you heard that? And those are all, those are nice expressions. God bless America. Yes, please, God do bless America. America needs to get back to its Christian values. Well, the operative word there is back to. So again, when you say I got to get back to, that means you were there initially in the first place. Well, is that thinking the right thinking? Well, we want the first people to think like this, and I want you to grab your Bible and look at Amos chapter 5 as we make this point. In Amos chapter 5, read it for me, Alonzo. Yes. Actually, back up to 21. Back up to 21. I will not smell your solemn assembly. Yes. Though you offer me burnt offering and your meat offering, I will not accept it. Neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. Let's stop for a second. Okay? Now I want you to read this with me. Because what Amos is doing is he's dealing with Israel, and Israel basically is going through the motions of their relationship with God. They are doing well economically. They are doing well in terms of their commerce. The nation basically is having a bumper crop every single year. But while they are progressing from an economic standpoint, They are not progressing from a spiritual standpoint. To the contrary, when you read through the book, you'll see that the rich were taking advantage of the poor, that there was gross injustice, all kinds of social inequity. And when you hear people today talking about, well, we've got to do something to help poor people to be better in their situation, you hear charges of socialism. You hear charges of communism. But what Amos would say is those aren't charges of socialism and communism at all. Those are charges of being godlike. Because it was God who got mad at his own people, who were more involved in, again, the ritual of their religion than having a relationship with the one who gave them their religion. So they were all about keeping the law and going through the motion and making sure that they were in church, or making sure that they were offering the sacrifices, or making sure they were doing X, Y, or Z. But I want you to read your Bible so that you can see with your own eyes how God felt about those folk who, had that religious tradition. Israel is a nation before God. We as Israel, we got to get back to our religious roots. We as Israel, we have to honor the God of our fathers. It's kind of the same talk we have in our day and time. And what we see in our day and time is the same thing we see in theirs. So let's read a little bit more, please, Alonzo. Yes. Mm-hmm. See? Keep that worship to yourself. God says, I don't want it. I don't want you coming up here with all of that, God this, God that, God the other. You know what I want from you? The 24th verse. But let judgment run down as water. Yes. And righteousness as a mighty stream. This is what God is saying, and we really need to get this. Because most of the church buildings that you see in our country today, most of them were built in the 1940s and 50s. Now, of course, you have a totally different construction type on the ones built, in the 1980s and 90s. But the bulk of churches in our country, those buildings, they were built in the 1940s and 50s. The men came back after World War II. You have, of course, the baby boom. And you've got this situation where there's a heightened sense of national pride and this idea that we've got to serve God and walk with him because look how he delivered us through this war. And church buildings were going up all over the country. But so were lynchings. So were the rape of black women and children. So was injustice and inequity. So was don't you even apply here because you're black. So was colored waiting room only, colored service only. Yeah, you can eat at this restaurant, but go around to the back window and we'll throw your food out to you. You see, church buildings were going up all over the place. But as God tells Amos, I want righteousness. I want justice. I don't want your empty religiosity. I don't want your empty expressions of relationship with me that you visualize as valid because of the rituals that you do. See? And that, again, is what we have done and what many people continue to do in our country. I was doing some more research and reading. Some of the most racist thoughts I ever heard and read in my life came from members of the Church of Christ. The same ones who tell you that there's only one church. You got to be baptized. I'm not talking about stuff I read from 40 years ago. I'm talking about comments and everything that were made 1 week ago. Because, again, what happened in Amos is happening today. So this is what we have to understand, and that's why I like this passage, because it's timeless. We always had religious folk who thought that they had a relationship with God simply because they thought they had a relationship with God. But my friends, again, nothing could be farther from the truth. So we look at this and we have to understand it because that's what Amos is telling us. And his message to them that warns them is a message to us in America today that must warn us. It's a message that, in my thinking, is at the heart of this whole Black Lives Matter movement. Because what they're looking at is the acquisition of justice. They're looking at the acquisition of righteousness. So black lives do indeed matter. That organization has validity. But I want you to understand this. Because faithfulness to God is not defined by hollow habits or anything like that. Faithfulness to God is defined by a commitment to and a conviction to the principles of righteousness and justice. When you've got a person, police officer, who can kill somebody who's unarmed and then get off for it, that's not a commitment to righteousness and justice. When you've got a city with 2,172 shootings and a murder rate that's up 72%, That's not a commitment, and black men are doing it to other black men, mind you. That's not a commitment to righteousness and justice. And what we are looking at is this commitment that Amos is talking about. What can I do? What can we do? What can you do toward that commitment? And the person who wants that commitment of righteousness and justice, this is the second thing that you have to understand. It's not just the righteousness and justice for me only, but it's also righteousness and justice for everybody else. And herein lies the problem of white privilege. Because and let me pause for a second. I don't want y'all to get it twisted. Because when slaves were enslaved in America, the only persons that helped them toward freedom were other black people. Amen? You know that's a big old lie. During the civil rights movement, the only persons that marched and protested and put their lives on the line were black people. You know that's a lie. The NAACP itself, when it was established, only black people were part of the establishment of that organization. If you know your history, you know that's a big lie too. So from the time that black people have been in this country fighting for justice, there has always, by God's grace, been the presence of white people too. We're not talking about white folk as the enemy. White folk are an integral part of our advancement, but we also know that white folk are an integral part of our subjugation as well. And those folk who don't even recognize that are the persons who benefit from what we call white privilege. Now, some of you, I know you've heard that expression before, but let me give you a little definition of what it actually is. White privilege is a set of advantages and or immunities that white people benefit from on a daily basis beyond those common to all others. Now, don't you just love that sentence? Some principles and immunities that white folk benefit from every day that nobody else has. You see, when you take your black butt into the store and, you start shopping around, they might not look at Sally or Susie or Miss Becky or whatever when she comes in. But I guarantee you they will look at you. Ooh, the preacher up there talking kind of raw. That's right, because life is raw. Our experience is raw. And I don't know about you, but I've had that experience of going into the store and I got to turn around, can I help you? I know you're supposed to be asking me that, but you're so close on my heels, what do you want? If I need you, I'll let you know. And sometimes you have to do that. That's the reality of it. Now, here goes somebody else, and cartoons have been done. I have seen cartoons, I have seen little, what do you call them, little commentaries, where the people are in the store, they were so focused on these two young black boys who weren't doing anything in the store, and another guy's going through, he's got black gloves on, he's stealing, white guy, he's stealing. He went up to the register, opened up the register, and they over here, the store owners, they're looking at the black boys over here who are doing absolutely nothing. He went up and opened up the register, took all the money out of the register, put it in his pocket, went through and got everything he wanted out of the store and walked out. And the store owners are still looking at the black boys. And to add insult to injury, the store owner, just as the white guy was going out the store, sir, wait. And you think, okay, here's justice. He reaches in the cash register and gives him the last $2. You forgot these. You see, that's white privilege, okay? When you can be guilty and you're not guilty because you're white. White privilege can exist without white people's conscious knowledge of its presence. A lot of my white friends don't even understand. When we have these conversations, they don't get it. It takes us back to the Jupiter example. They don't understand how they could be driving down the same street as I, but I'm pulled over while they progress. They don't get how I can talk about what I'm talking about to you with the sense of, I don't know, a connection and fervor and feeling, because they don't see it as that important. Of course everybody has a fair chance in America. Of course, if you just work hard, you'll advance in America. Of course, if you obey the law, the police officer is your friend. This is how they think. Why? Because even unconsciously, they are receiving the benefits of white privilege. So that white privilege, of course, helps to maintain the racial hierarchy in this country. Now, that's just the social truth of the matter. And you can be mad about it, you can cuss about it, you can hate white people because of it, but none of that is going to make a difference. As a matter of fact, that would make the problems even worse. White privilege is here. Now again, what does that white privilege look like? Well, I just gave you one example from fiction, but I want to give you some other examples from real life. White privilege looks like a man with a gun in his hand in Florida, pointed at officers who are perhaps, I don't know, from here to that gray car. So I'm the man with the gun, and that's the officers are the gray vehicle out there. And I've got the gun not in the holster, not behind me, not in my pocket. I've got the gun, I'm brandishing the gun toward the officers. Not only am I brandishing the gun toward the officers, stop, put it down, stop, get down. Now they're walking backward as I walk toward them. These are the orders, stop, put it down, stop, lay down, stop. And they're backing up while he continues to go forward, cussing, with the gun in his hand. Then some helicopters circle above. He points the weapon at them, okay? He does this for a good 2 minutes or so. While the police continually back up and order him to stop, he continues to come forward. And it's not until he gets too close that they fire a single shot. And it knocks him on his behind, but it doesn't kill him. And he sits there for, 90 seconds or so, and he gets up off the ground, stumbles over, and sits under a shade tree. And it's only then, when he puts the gun down, because now he's wounded and it hurts, then the officers very slowly, very cautiously, with the shields and everything, about, 5, 6 officers, they move in closely, and they take him down. That's what white privilege looks like. Because I guarantee you, if it had been me with a weapon in my hand, pointing at the police officers like that, y'all would have a new preacher by now, okay? Because I'd be dead. I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like this fellow in a convenience store, and the police have him, and it's 2 officers, and they're trying to put cuffs on him, and all of a sudden he breaks out fighting the police officers. And he fights them for all of 2 minutes. I mean, he's fighting left and right, swinging at the police officers, pushing the police officers. They don't take their weapons out of the holster one time. I mean, he's literally beating their behind. 2 officers, he's kicking their rumps. I don't know if he was on drugs or what, but he beats their behind until he's tired inside the store, and then he goes outside. It was a restaurant. He goes outside the restaurant, up and down the street, yelling and screaming, and the police officers run out of the restaurant behind him. You see, that's what white privilege looks like. Because I guarantee you, if Curtis had been acting a fool with the police like that, Danita would be planning a funeral by now. Okay? Because again, that's where we live, and that is the way things go. So it's unfortunate. But we hear all of this. We understand all of this. But again, what do we do about all of this? Well, where is the voice of the church? And as I descend toward a conclusion, I got to side with Chief Brown of the Dallas Police Department. Y'all remember Chief Brown, somebody who the world basically didn't know anything about, who came into national prominence last week after, of course, Michael Johnson acted a fool and killed all of those innocent police officers and shot up several more. But you had the peaceful protest there in Dallas. By the way, a white preacher was a part of the group that put that protest together. So when you get back to this idea of, oh, white people are the devil and we hate them, well, that's just stupid, because that's not true. In any event, we have the protest there in Dallas, and in the wake, of course, of the shootings, you've got people, protesting back and forth. But what Chief Brown said was, you know what? You want to do something about all this? Get off the protest line. We're hiring. This is what the chief said. We're hiring. Put in an application. So if you want to bring about some change, stop talking about it and actually be about it. And I love that, because I think that same message applies to us in the church. Get out of the protest line. I'm going to take that, well, it's so messed up. Ooh, police officers killing folk. Ooh, I declare these young black men ought to stop that foolishness. Oh, we talk about it 6 ways to Sunday. And that's all we do is talk about it. But you know what? God is hiring, Put in your application. And all you got to do is say, God, I want to work for you. And I guarantee you, he has a position for you. He has a position for me. So it's not what needs to be done. It's what will I do? What I hate above all else is people who can talk the talk, but do nothing to walk the walk. I see it in the church. What we need to do is, and I believe we Christians need to, and sometimes I just want to go, bow, shut up, because I have seen in you nothing but loquaciousness. All you do is talk. You do no ministry. You make no commitment. When I reach out to you begging for your help, you tell me no. So shut your doggone mouth. Until you stand up to make a difference, don't make a sound. Now, I know that this kind of preaching don't excite people, but this is Jesus preaching. Because again, I want you to go back to Amos chapter 5, verses 21 through 24, because he's saying, get away from the rhetoric, and let's hold on to the reality. And this, again, is what changes the world, and this is what will change us, one soul at a time. So God is hiring. Fill out your application, West Broad. Write about the problem. Some of you can write. I know you can write. I've read some of your stuff. You don't have to be prolific. God knows I'm not, but I can write a little bit, and you can too. So instead of just talking about it, why don't you write something so that people can read, disseminate it so that you can kind of direct persons in their thought process, raise awareness, become a police officer. You want to talk about these white cops killing black people? Well, then you're young, you're healthy, become a police officer, like old Clyde is trying to do. Okay? Not Clyde. Kyle is trying to do. In the process right now, just took his examination. So he's in the process of becoming a police officer. That's an example of not talking about it, but being about it. Okay? When you're on Facebook, instead of just, posting pictures of cats or what you ate last night or some movie you went to, why don't you engage in some of that conversation that you see on Facebook? People making these, backward statements, these statements of just pure ignorance. Why don't you engage that? Say something about it and invite those persons toward a difference in their thinking, a difference in their perspective. Now, I appreciate Black Lives Matter. God knows I do. But Black Lives Matter is rooted in worldly thinking. Black Lives Matter is rooted in this compartmentalized mindset of liberation of black people only. We're just talking about black folk. And not just black straight folk, but black queer folk. We're talking about black, just LGBT, the whole gang, the whole summit of it. We're talking about black disabled people. Any person of color, okay, that is marginalized in any way, Black Lives Matter is about supporting and helping those people. And that's all well and good, but they want to do it through secular means. And that's not possible. Because you cannot have freedom of the individual through the ways of human beings and the principles of men. You can only have freedom of the individual through the power of God. Nothing else works. And again, we can look at history and look at our own lives. When we've tried to do it on our own and with our own standard, we failed. But when we've done it by God's standard and in his way, we've succeeded. And you've got this in Scripture, Acts chapter 4, verse 12. We won't read it because our time is up, but I want you to mark it if you will. Acts chapter 4, verse number 12, neither is there salvation in any other. There's no salvation in Black Lives Matter because there's only one name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. This is the scripture. This is God talking to us. We've got John chapter 14, verse 6. Black Lives Matters is the way, the truth, and the life. And you can come to the Father through Black Lives Matters. No, sir, you know it doesn't say that. Jesus Christ says that I am all of those things, and only I am all of those things. John chapter 8, verse 36. The Son makes you free. You shall be free indeed. Black Lives Matter cannot make you free. It can be a political protest. They do very useful work. They are necessary. We appreciate everything about them. But again, they can't bring the change that people need. They can't bring the change that I need. Why? Because Black Lives Matters, they focus on the flesh. But Christian lives, they focus on the Father. So Black Lives Matter is good, but Christian lives are better. And Christian lives are better because they do all of the things that we are talking about now. Black Lives Matters focus on freedom of the body. But Christians' lives, we focus on freedom of the soul. Black Lives Matter, they're calling for police reform. But Christians in our lives, we are calling for people reform. You remember what Peter said in Acts chapter 3, verse 19? Repent, therefore, that times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord. Change your ways. Repent and change your thinking. When we change our thinking, we change our behavior. When we change our behavior, we will change our lives. When we change our lives, we will change our outcome. When we change our outcome, we will change our destiny. You don't get that from Black Lives Matters, but we do get it from Christian lives who go out and present the truth of God and the way of Christ to a broken and dying world. So again, as we think about all of this, we understand that Black Lives Matters, they are promoting, as we said from their website, the validity of black life. Christian lives, we understand that you got to promote the validity of black life, but you also have to promote the validity of Indian life, of Asian life, of white life, of Hispanic life, of all life. Why? Because God tells us in Acts chapter 17, he says it plainly there in that 26th verse. God of one blood has made every nation of men to dwell upon the face of all the earth. If God is not interested in promoting one race above the other, then how can I, as a Christian, be interested in promoting one race above another? What we want to promote is every race. As we live before God, understand more about God, and walk, of course, faithfully in the ways of God. So when I think about all of that, Black Lives Matter, it's good. But Christian lives, those are better. Because the Christian is not going to demonize the police. The Christian is going to understand, based on Romans chapter 13, that the police are the authority given by God. And we're going to work in partnership with the police. Why? Because the police are people. Look at Bernard right there. Police officer in New York for 20 years, okay? If we look at Bernard when he puts that blue uniform, he's the enemy. He's a man. He has 2 children, got a wife, got dreams, going to a baseball game this weekend. A regular guy. He's not some entity. The police officer is a person with the same dreams and hopes and responsibilities and feelings that we all have. But you got certain people in the movement who look at the police officers and policing as a whole as something that is against us. But Christian lives, we understand, no, sir, the police, they're for us. I want you to get this in your soul. Do you think that there are some rotten police officers? Of course there are. But how many people have gone to a mechanic, and a mechanic, to use Calvin's language, was no count, and ain't worth a cuss? And he did some stuff on your car, and you got as many problems after he fixed it as before he fixed it, maybe 2 or 3 more. Okay? Anybody ever had that experience before? Okay? And I want you to hold that one in your head. You go to a dentist, and the dentist doesn't give you the treatment that you think you should get. Matter of fact, he causes you more pain than you had before you went to him. Okay? I want you to hold that one in your head. You go to the grocery store, and you buy some watermelon, some corn, some meat products, some whatever, and you get it home and you start to cook, and you say, wait a minute now. This isn't even fresh. This is messed up. Now, whether it's the mechanic, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's the dentist, you had a bad experience, what you do is you never go to the dentist again. You never go to the grocery store again. You never go to the mechanic again, right? That's what you do. Y'all know the truth on that. Of course you don't. Because the experience of one experience in one place does not color your opinion about the experiences you could be having in other places. That's why you might stop going to that dentist, but you're going to go to a dentist. You might not go to that mechanic, but you're going to go to a mechanic. You might stop shopping at that store, but you're going to shop at some store. And it's the same way when we think about police officers. Again, in Black Lives Matter, that kind of characterization often is not pursued. But Christian lives matter more than Black Lives Matter because it is. And we need our people to understand that, particularly our young people, as we engage this. So the Christian life, you're not going to go NWA, Public Enemy, and Ice-T when it comes to the police officers. You're not going to go down that road. Some of you are laughing because you know what I'm talking about. You see, you're not going to approach the police like that. You're going to approach the police like Paul did in Romans chapter 13. Christian lives matter because, again, we are the only ones on the planet that can help the planet see the way that they should think and the way that they should live, which is the way of Christ, the thinking of Christ, the mindset of Christ, and ultimately the results of Christ. There was a lot of unrest in our nation, friends. and there should be unrest here at West Broad. As a matter of fact, I pray to God that there is intense unrest here at West Broad, because our people are not satisfied with the injustice that we see. Our people are not satisfied with the black-on-black violence that we see. Our people are not satisfied with the fact that 53,000 people a week are leaving churches instead of 53,000 people a week coming into churches. We're not satisfied. There is unrest here. And we want to protest all of that negativity. And while Black Lives Matter might help to a point, Christian lives matter because they help us all the way to be the people, again, that God is calling us to be, so that one day we will come in this room, and if you're not here by 10:30, you better bring your lawn chair with you because you won't have a seat in here. That's what we're working toward, but right now we're not there. You can look around and see that. But I'm not restricted by what is. I'm compelled by what might be. And when I think again about Black Lives Matter, when I think again about Christian lives that matter, that is my motivator. And I pray that it will be yours as well. So as we sit in this place, consider it all. Think about your life. Think about what you can do. Get off the protest line. Fill out your application, and let's make a difference for God, being the visible representation of the invisible Christ in this city, on your job, in your classroom, wherever you are. Let's show the world, yes, Black lives matter, but Christian lives matter more. And let me tell you why. If you receive it, let's stand together as we sing the song of encouragement.